Murphy's career. Today, new shocking allegations coming from her father, who says she was poisoned. And Murphy's father, Angelo Berto, and family friend Julia Davis are joining us now from Los Angeles. To the both of you, thank you so much. I know this is difficult. I'm sorry for your loss. We appreciate you being with us because this is really shocking to a lot of people, hearing that you believe that she was poisoned. Mr. Berto, why do you believe that? Why do you think that she was poisoned?
Well, it's very suspicious, and I read the reports on the toxicology reports, and everything sounds very, very, very more or less suspicious. And I feel she was poisoned. There's no question about that. And I feel she was murdered.
Julia, was there something specific in those reports that he's talking about that leads you to believe that it was poison and not natural causes?
Yes, from the very beginning, AJ always believed that there was something very odd about Brittany's passing, and then reviewing autopsy reports, we could see that there were multiple symptoms that would usually go with poisoning, and then the test results confirmed that, where the lab found 10 heavy metals in very high quantities. So we do believe that it was poisoning, and we would like to have it properly investigated, since the coroner never tested for poisons originally.
Well, that's pretty shocking. Angelo, do you suspect somebody responsible for poisoning her? And who?
No, I don't. I don't suspect anyone. Actually, I do really, but I rather not speak about that. The question is, the fact is that she was poisoned and she was murdered, as far as I'm concerned.
Angelo, how about her husband, Simon? He died also very young age. Has any additional testing been done to look at his death as well?
There hasn't been any testing done yet, but we are in touch with Simon's mother, Linda, and she very much wants to have his remains tested as well. It is our belief that Simon was also poisoned by the same means, because both Simon and Brittany exhibited identical symptoms.
I believe the case and the situation surrounding Julia Davis is a situation of historical significance in retaliating against somebody doing what they should do as an American, which is pointing out a flaw, a dangerous flaw. So I think it'll set a precedence that they'll be talking about it perhaps in law schools and political science classes, maybe 100 years from now.
I could have never imagined anything so outlandish as what would happen to us in real life.
Oh, my son is passed out.
I'm Brittany Murphy's father, Angelo. Brittany also was called as a witness in the Julia Davis case. Brittany did tell me she was under surveillance, and incidentally, so was I.
Simon Monjack and Brittany Murphy were subjected to the same terror tactics that were utilized by the Department of Homeland Security in the Julia Davis case.
We were told to be especially vigilant during national holidays. A special designated date to watch was July 4, 2004, Independence Day, when intelligence data suggested the highest possibility of terrorists attempting to enter the United States.
It's not an issue of any wrongdoing. The government is more concerned about the person making the report than fixing the problem.
Our neighbor, Matthew Judd, filmed a Black Hawk helicopter raid of our home.
He was shaking. I mean, if he wasn't holding the camera steady.
Only weeks after turning over the tape to us, Matthew Judd was found dead in his home.
So the State Department has issued a worldwide travel alert, saying that there could be potential terrorist attacks based on an alleged threat from Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. And because of this, 21 embassies have been evacuated and closed across the Muslim world. But while we focus on the threat of terrorism abroad, it seems that glaring things are missed here at home. Exactly what my next guest has experienced firsthand as she worked as a Customs and Border Protection officer on the border of Mexico. Her story resulted in a crackdown against her by the federal government. So to talk about her case and its broader implications, I'm joined now by Julia Davis, former Customs and Border Protection officer and national security whistleblower. Thanks so much for coming on, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, can you very briefly explain what it is that you saw?
We had very specific alerts that on 4th of July 2004, members of Al-Qaeda were planning to cross the borders into the United States using our land borders with Mexico, which is exactly where I worked, at the largest and busiest land border crossing in the United States, which is also linked to the San Diego area where most of the 9/11 hijackers had entered, and some of them lived there. So we had these specific alerts, and on that date I saw that 23 people from terrorist countries were allowed to enter the United States, and none of the proper checks were done. They were not enrolled in any databases. No one bothered to take their fingerprints. They were pretty much just flushed across, and no one knew about it. When I brought it up to the port director, he told me to take it to Intel. Lo and behold, on this date of special importance, everyone in Intel was given a day off. Their door was closed. And I reported this to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, and myself became the enemy of the state for embarrassing Homeland Security.
So let's take it back. You said that these people were from terrorist countries. What does that entail?
There's a list of, it's a fluctuating list from 23 to 26 countries that is created by the Department of Justice, and it names certain countries with links to terrorist activities.
Can you name a couple of them?
Iran, Iraq, Pakistan.
Was Saudi Arabia on that list?
I don't think so.
Okay, and the criteria you were told to justify these persons of interest were exactly that. If they're coming from one of these countries, and you said that there was actually an unprecedented number of them coming through without really any checks at that day.
Exactly. We would normally get from 5 to 15 people in a whole month, and here we had 23 in 10 hours. None of them were properly processed, and it was the date then something like this was expected to happen, so it was clearly a red flag.
And so you said that you reported it to your management, and then you reported to the FBI and became actually the enemy of the state yourself. What happened when you reported to the FBI?
Homeland Security was incredibly embarrassed when the FBI started to investigate this breach of national security. And so instead of investigating that, which they closed with no action and no investigation, they opened 54 investigations against me. And they sent a Black Hawk helicopter to raid my home. They had my husband and I twice maliciously prosecuted and imprisoned, and we had to fight back to clear our names. And in the end, we're declared factually innocent, sued Homeland Security, and they settled the case. So finally.
And so you were actually, I mean, we're talking about a commando-style raid with a helicopter on your home. 54 investigations because of mere embarrassment for the DHS and the Customs Border Protection Agency. It sounds a little bit like an overreach. I mean, to pour this much money and resources into doing this to you.
I would say so. I mean, they thought that two burly guys wouldn't be enough to take me down. They needed planes and helicopters and 27-man SWAT team with assault weapons, and this was absolutely a quasi-military operation.
So I guess it all begs the question, why? Why would they do that just if they were embarrassed that, you know, let's say 20 people from these countries that harbor terrorists got in and you reported it? I mean, why go to such extremes to shut your case down, to shut you up, and to basically fearmonger you?
I could think of two very good reasons. If something ever came of it, if there was a terrorist attack and those people were involved, I wouldn't be around to tell anyone, I told you so. I knew when this happened, when they let them in. And the second reason is to send a message to other whistleblowers or potential whistleblowers. Do you want this to happen to you?
Was there any sort of things that came out later that showed that these people that actually came in the country on that day were threats? Did anything happen at all that deemed them suspicious later on?
All the information that we were able to obtain during litigation just shows that that investigation was immediately closed. So as far as I know, they're still in the country and no one investigated them.
And when you won your lawsuit against the DHS, what was the process like? I mean, was it a bunch of bureaucratic hurdles for you? I mean, talk about that.
It was a nightmare. It lingered for many years, but the good side about it is we were able to conduct videotaped depositions of the Homeland Security agents involved in this persecution, so we were able to get the details from the perpetrators themselves. So that was very important, I think, for other whistleblowers to see that and to realize that they too can and should fight back the same way.
So let's talk about the bigger picture here. I mean, you were labeled a domestic terrorist as a result of this, which is completely absurd. But on top of that, I mean, do you think that this government really cares about fighting terrorism?
That was one of the major letdowns, and I think that also accounts for why Homeland Security has one of the highest rates of attrition from all federal agencies. People that come to work there thinking they will actually help protect this nation from terror, and then they see that it's nothing more than a revolving door and no one really cares about the so-called threat. It's being used for other reasons, and that is to just dominate the masses and to create these multi-billion-dollar industries that, you know, one hand greasing the other.
Elaborate more on that. I mean, do you think that they've used terrorism to justify kind of just an expansion of government, the DHS, TSA, and also just perpetuate endless war abroad? I mean, is there anything really that you've seen that this is not just an isolated case, that this is actually systematic across these agencies?
From what I've heard, the politicians themselves discussing that they were hoping to pass measures that they were included in the Patriot Act way before 9/11, and this just merely created an opportunity for them to do that. And so Michael Chertoff and Viet Dinh, Vietnamese immigrant, had became architects of this massive act, but it was in the making long before that.
Yeah, it's important to note that Michael Chertoff actually gained immensely from the body scanners implemented across airports as well. And your domestic terrorist status, where does that stand right now? I mean, are you still declared a terrorist to the eyes of the government right now?
Well, you know what? You're probably a domestic terrorist as well, because in my case, they justified it by saying that I was an aggravation because of my anti-government statements in my lawsuits and public press releases. So that would make quite a lot of people qualify for that dubious designation. And all they do with that for is just to allow themselves warrantless surveillance, warrantless searches and seizures. And if you notice, FBI and Homeland Security are sitting very quietly right now because they're doing the same kind of spying as the NSA is doing, except no one is talking about that right now.
And they have an insatiable urge to continue getting more power, more access. Julia Davis, it's amazing that, you know, they expelled so many resources and money to shut down your case when really they could have just invested it into having proper border protection and investing it here in this country. Thank you so much for coming on, telling your extraordinary story. Julia Davis, former Customs and Border Protection Officer, whistleblower. Appreciate it.
Thank you.